This episode contains graphic descriptions of a crime scene and references to intimate partner violence. Please listen with care. Aleda Spang knew something was wrong as soon as she heard the banging on her front door. It's 1 o'clock in the morning on the Northern Cheyenne reservation in Lame Deer, Montana. Aleda is asleep until the banging wakes her. Startled, she goes to the front door to find her 19-year-old daughter crying and in a panic.
So I opened the door and I was like, "What's going on?" And she said, "Gerard ran over Christy." And I said, "Where is she? Is she okay?" And she just started crying and she said, "No, she's dead."
Christy is Aleda's younger sister. Immediately, Aleda breaks down in tears.
I was in disbelief. Just couldn't believe it.
Aleda only allows herself to cry for a few minutes. She pulls herself together because she realizes someone has to tell the rest of her siblings. Aleda is one of 8 children. She's the second oldest. Christy was number 6. Aleda is calling the rest of her family. They all live nearby on the reservation, but not all of them have phones. So some she writes on Facebook Messenger to let them know that Christy is dead, and they were heading to Christy's house to find out what happened.
Because we didn't know where it happened. We didn't know any details.
Aleda changes out of her pajamas, puts on some boots, and jumps into her car. She races to Christy's with her daughter trailing behind her. Christy only lives about a quarter mile from Aleda's house. They're separated by the 2 lanes of Highway 212, but Aleda can literally see Christy's neighborhood from her front door. When she arrives at Christy's house, she can tell immediately that something is off.
And we expected like a crime scene tape. Officer still there because it just happened a few hours ago.
Everything looks normal in the neighborhood. The houses here are in small groups nestled into the tree-lined hills, just like most on the reservation. It's the early morning hours of March 7th, 2020. The skies are clear and the moon lights the streets. It's a cold but calm night. No one seems to be around. Aleda was told Christy was killed here, but if she was, wouldn't there be some kind of commotion, some panic, some response? Aleda gets out of her SUV. She's joined by her daughter, 4 of her sisters, her brother, and her 22-year-old son. They go to the front door of Christy's house, but the door is locked. They try the back door, but it's locked too. Then Aleda and her siblings notice a window on the side of the house that's cracked open. Her son sticks his head in and sees a man he doesn't know sitting in Christy's living room. He yells at the guy to let them in, but the man does nothing. So Aleda's son jumps through the window and into the house to let the rest of the family inside.
When we're like, "Hey, where's Christy?" And he's like, "She's sleeping in the back room."
This gives Aleda some hope. If Christy is sleeping in the back room, maybe her sister is actually alive.
We go in, and there's 2 people passed out in one room, kids' room. Guy on the couch, and they're like, "She's in the back room, she's sleeping."
So Aleda runs to look in the back room, desperate to find her sister, but no Christy. Aleda doesn't understand, where is she? What are these people doing here, and what the hell is going on? By now, Aleda's sister Kimberly speaks up, and she's pissed.
I could hear her cussing, saying, "What the are you doing here? Where's Christy at? And get the out of here. What the you guys doing here?" And she actually jerked them out of bed and was pushing them out the door.
These people have clearly been drinking, and they're not leaving the house easily. So after a while of fighting with them, Aleda calls the police and asks for help to kick them out. The police station is only a few miles away, but it takes 45 minutes for a cop to arrive. By this time, the family got the 3 people out of the house and are waiting for help outside on the front lawn. An officer pulls up, but he doesn't get out of his car. Aleda goes to talk to him, says this is where Christy was supposedly killed and tells him the group just left and were walking down the highway. They speak for about 30 seconds, and the officer leaves the scene to look for them. Aleda said the officer didn't give her any information about Christy, and he never came back to the house after that short visit. Not knowing what else to do, the family goes searching around the property looking for answers. They look for any sign of Christy around the house and along the street. Then, about 100 yards down the road, she sees it.
And there's this big pool of blood, and we're like, what do we do? It's 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
It's the middle of the night. Aleda is using her cell phone flashlight to see, while one of her siblings pulls their car around, shining their headlights on this horrific scene.
We all went there, and it was like we were all in shock. And we just stood there quietly, like just looked at it. All the blood.
If this is her sister's blood, then where is her sister's body? Standing beside Aleda is Rael Rowland, Christy's best friend.
And I was like, where's the cops, first of all? Why is there no cops here? Because it's a crime scene, you know, like there should have been yellow tape.
So they're just standing there, looking at a street covered in pools of blood with no idea of how it got there. The largest spot was dark red, about 3 feet wide. And in this moment, they knew something horrible happened here.
Everybody just started crying. We knew she was dead because that was a lot of blood on the ground.
It's eerily quiet on a 700 square mile reservation. They don't know what to do. But then,
my son goes back to Christy's house and he's like, hey, there's some gas in the gas can. You can burn this blood. So we poured it on there and burnt the blood.
With no police at the scene, the family felt they had no choice but to clean up the blood themselves.
We poured gas on it because we're not going to leave our sister's blood there.
Christy Rose Woodenthigh died that night, March 6, 2020. She was 33 years old. Aleda and her family went to Christy's home that night looking for answers, and they've been looking ever since. Why weren't the police there? Had anyone collected evidence? What happened to Christy, and how did she end up dead? Without any answers and with little help from law enforcement, Christy's family and friends were forced to piece together her final moments. It all started that night, in the middle of a blood-soaked road, desperate for some clarity. I'm Cara Korte.
And I'm Bo Erickson. Cara and I are both federal government reporters for CBS News. And together, we've been investigating how federal authorities respond when Indigenous people go missing or are murdered on reservations in America. And that is how we learned about Christy Woodenthigh.
For the past 2 years, Christy's family believes the criminal justice system has failed their sister and them at every turn. The circumstances around Christy's untimely death didn't make sense to us, 2 reporters from outside of Indian country. We started asking questions, which led us to investigate further, and what we found was a maze of issues that left Christy's family and too many Native Americans without answers when tragedy strikes. This is Missing Justice, Episode 1, Where is Christy? We're driving to meet Aleda Spang. She lives in Lame Deer, Montana on the Northern Cheyenne reservation. It's about 100 miles southeast of Billings, the largest city in Montana.
It's like unbelievably beautiful out here. We are here in December now, so the total plains and this grassland is covered in snow, but you look off to the left and right and there's these like deep red rock cliff formations.
We're driving down Interstate 90 through open grassland and fields to get to the reservation when something catches our eye.
It's really snowy right now. So we're walking over here, and on the overpass, there are 4 red handprints, huge red handprints that are probably about like 2 feet wide each.
We don't know who painted these handprints, but we know what they mean. They are a symbol of the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis. After our pit stop, we get back on the road.
At the stop sign, turn left onto US 212 toward Little Bighorn.
We pass the Battle of Little Bighorn National Monument, the site where U.S. troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, were defeated by Cheyenne, Sioux, and Lakota warriors in 1876. Some of the Native American descendants of that battle still live nearby in Lame Deer, Montana, on the Northern Cheyenne reservation, which is exactly where we're going to meet Aleda. Driving onto the reservation, we see the symbol of Northern Cheyenne on a welcome sign. They call the symbol a morning star, a white diamond with 4 rays pointing from each side. On the reservation, the morning star is everywhere, from billboards to bumper stickers. In the center of Lame Deer is a traffic circle with a morning star flag raised high. Right next to the traffic circle, Bo and I spot Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church.
So we head inside.
The destination is on your left, Lame Deer.
The church deacon and Aleda are waiting for us.
This is just our AA room, and it's kind of our pit room.
Aleda, I'm Bo. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
He's nervous. Tell the truth. She almost backed out on y'all.
Well,
so.
listen, take a seat. Aleda is very soft-spoken. She has straight black hair, half pulled up, and is wearing a sweatshirt with Las Vegas written across the chest. She's wearing pearl earrings and snakeskin boots. And even though Aleda is nervous, she seems comfortable here.
My mom had 8 kids, and every Sunday I would be the only one to walk to church. No one else went to church.
Aleda's lived here all her life. She was raised by a single mom and is the second oldest of 8 kids. Her face lights up when she speaks about her family.
Yeah, it was fun because we always had our siblings around. The house was always full. We always had friends coming over, playing, neighbors coming over.
When they were out of the house, the family had Aleda.
I'm protective of all my sisters. I remember when they were in high school and they'd get in trouble at school or girls would try to fight them. I'd be like, what?
One of those sisters was Christy.
Christy was one of my younger sisters, but Christy was born on Christmas. That's where she got her name, Christy Rose. And my mom was going to name her Christmas Rose, but she just named her Christy.
Aleda said that one of their favorite things to do as siblings was to grab snacks from the town grocery store. They would walk a few miles to the Cheyenne Depot, buy packets of powdered Kool-Aid, and eat the sugar like pixie sticks. Christy loved sweet and sour things. She also had an interest in sports. Christy grew up to be a pretty competitive teenage girl.
She was a really happy cheerleader. She got everybody going. She was tiny, so they could flip her in the air. You see the pictures of her. She's always smiling, and they have her on top of the pyramid.
Christy ran track like most of the women in her family before her. She was fast, too. Aleda says she made it to her high school state championships.
She was very petite and...
Yeah, powerhouse.
Yeah.
When she was that age, what did she want to be when she got older?
She never really said what she wanted to be. But she was like always happy. She never fought with any of the sisters. She was one of the happiest ones. I never seen her mad, then. Never seen her.
Ever.
No.
A happy young athlete who spent most of her time with her siblings. Everyone we spoke to said she was always ready to lend a hand. When her older sister Aleda had her own kids, Christy was right there to help.
So I had a son when I was 17, and every time I needed something done, I needed a babysitter, I needed to go to the store, I took my son to Christy, and she was still living with my mom at the time, and she would keep him and watch him. And then every time it was his birthday, she would come help me and cook and clean and everything. I don't know what I would have done without her.
As Christy reached her 20s, Aleda had her hands full. She was raising her own family in Lame Deer, and she really only saw Christy when she came over to help. But despite being busy, Aleda remained protective of her little sister. She would worry about Christy because she wasn't able to keep an eye on her like she did when they were young. But Aleda took comfort knowing that she had Rael Rowland, a family friend, to look after Christy. But neither Rael nor Aleda could have ever predicted what would happen to Christy. They never imagined that looking after bubbly, helpful Christy would one day mean meeting up at Christy's house and finding a crime scene. Back on that March night when Aleda and her family raced to Christy's house looking for answers, they didn't just call the police for help. They also called Rael.
So I've always known Christy since she was a kid.
That night, she woke up to a flurry of missed calls and text messages from the family. She jumped out of bed and drove to the scene because, just like Aleda, Rael was always looking out for Christy. Christy and Rael's families aren't related, but she says growing up on the res, everyone knows everybody. You build close relationships with friends and neighbors that become like family. Rael grew up an only child, so when she started dating Mike, Aleda and Christy's brother, she was suddenly surrounded by this large family and soon became a part of all their lives.
So it was Mike and then the girls that live there. Like, they're young, coming into being adolescents. They don't have any role models or anything. And me being the fixer-upper person, help everybody.
Now, Rael is quite a formidable, confident woman that certainly people wouldn't want to mess with. She's not someone to stand on the sidelines. The more Rael got to know Christy, the more protective she became.
I immediately became the big sister, and I made Mike, their brother, like, keep them in line, and they had to come right home, do homework. I kept them busy, always kept them busy doing stuff.
Rael looked out for Christy, even though they were only 7 months apart in age. She even took her prom dress shopping because she didn't think anyone else in Christy's family would. And this wasn't a one-way relationship. Christy meant a lot to Rael.
She'd come make me feel better, I'll come stay with you. And so she'd always stay with me all the time. She just had a really good personality. She was just a really caring person.
It wasn't easy for Rael growing up without any siblings. There was no one around to laugh with or confide in.
Just for somebody to trust. It's really hard to come by around here. But keeping secrets, even though they weren't really secrets, just girl talk. Like, growing up, being an only child really sucked. And no matter what, she was always willing to come with me.
As they both got older, it became clear to Rael that Christy's world mostly consisted of Lame Deer. So she tried to introduce Christy to life beyond the reservation. She took Christy to Billings to try new food. They went to Applebee's, but Rael said Christy was picky and wouldn't eat anything she wasn't used to. Eventually, Rael left the reservation to attend college, and she really wanted Christy to do the same, to study and to meet new people. She said she wanted Christy to put herself first and find opportunities that she didn't otherwise know existed.
I wanted her to come to college. I was like, come to college. I'm at college. You can go to college. As much as I pushed, she never wanted to engage in anything like that. They never had the moral support. Like, it just wasn't normal for somebody to do that. Like, life only exists in West Side on the reservation.
With Rael at college, their relationship changed. Rael and Christy's brother broke up, and between the distance and getting older, the two friends saw less of each other. But even with those changes, they never stopped calling each other sisters. And that's why Rael was so surprised when she heard Christy had a boyfriend.
And I was like, who's Gerard? Like, who is this guy?
Rael didn't know Gerard, and Rael knows everyone from the reservation. Neither did Aleda, who was still living nearby, but she took notice because this seemed to be Christy's first serious relationship.
We finally found out that she was going out with Gerard Three Fingers.
As a good, protective older sister, Aleda remembers she quickly had questions about this new man.
I remember when she left one time for a couple of days from my mom's, and then she came back and she was with him, and I didn't know him. He was quiet. He just didn't talk to anybody. And then he started staying there, and they were okay staying there, but when they were drinking when they left and never came back.
Both Aleda and Rael said the more Christy was around Gerard, the more she started to change. She started drinking and partying. But they said this party life became the core of Christy and Gerard's relationship. And where they live on the Northern Cheyenne reservation, the tribe has outlawed alcohol. It's an effort by tribal leaders to try and combat addiction. So any drinking on reservation is largely done in secret. That secrecy pushed Christy further and further away from Rael and Aleda. Aleda says this is when her relationship with Christy began to strain. She wasn't answering calls, and she became hard to track down. Sometimes Aleda would go to Christy's house looking for her sister. She would knock on the front door, and Gerard would answer. Aleda said she would ask to see Christy, but he would turn Aleda away. And the times when Aleda did see her sister, Christy wasn't herself. Aleda asked Christy questions about her life and relationship with Gerard, but could never get a straight answer. Their relationship wasn't a fling. Gerard and Christy were together on and off for 8 years. They had children together, but even happy milestones were quickly overshadowed by the toxic side of their relationship. The substance abuse and isolation devolved into violence. Aleda said Christy started showing up with bruises and black eyes. Christy told her they came from Gerard. Aleda begged her sister to leave him and get help. We tried reaching out to Gerard through his family and attorney, but we never heard back.
I was scared for her because he is big and she was tiny. I've never argued with him, fought with him, because he would be in the back room when I got there, or he'd be gone. And she was always scared. I've never thought that he would kill her, though.
But Gerard was accused of killing Christy, and he had a conviction in his past that had an eerily similar story. This season on Missing Justice, we follow the federal justice system and how it failed Christy Woodenthigh.
She said she called the police and they never came.
They just dropped the ball. They just dropped the ball so much over and over and over.
And just when Christy's family thought they were close to finding justice,
That's when we got pissed off. That's when I was like, raising hell. Like, why the hell is this guy not in jail?
Missing Justice is a CBS News podcast. This episode was reported by me, Cara, Korte and Erickson. If you want to get in touch with us, email missingjustice@cbsnews.com. We wanted to thank the Northern Cheyenne people for their hospitality and for sharing their stories with us. This project was also reported and produced in part in Washington, D.C., so we wanted to acknowledge that we work from the ancestral homelands of the Anacostan and neighboring Piscataway and Pamunkey indigenous peoples. Dr. Iris Prettypaint, a member of the Blackfeet Nation and a descendant of the Crow Nation, worked with us as a sensitivity reader. She has over 45 years of experience as an educator and is a leading authority on cultural resilience with American Indian and Alaska Native communities. Steve Races is the Executive Vice President of Podcasting and Audio at Paramount. At CBS News, Ingrid Cyprian-Matthews is the Executive Vice President of News Gathering, and Mark Lima is our DC Bureau Chief. Our production partner is Neon Hum Media. At Neon Hum, our executive producer is Jonathan Hirsch. Our senior producer is Joanna Clay. Liz Sanchez is our associate producer. Stephanie Serrano is our associate editor. Original music by Asha Ivanovich. Sound design by Scott Somerville. Additional tracks from Epidemic Sound. And our fact checker is Naomi Barr. Thanks for listening.